It's our weekly sports episode. Well, you might as well call it our infamous podcast about sports and stuff. Where on this podcast, you get to hear a little bit of information about what's going on in the sports world, what's going on in the video game world, a little bit of the technology information, get a little bit of a music knowledge chat, two of our personal faves that we do on the show, the artist spotlight, and of course the infamous ass of the week. So stick around. You might actually enjoy the episode. One, three, two of the past. I'm your host BT, back with yet another episode. Somewhere in this podcast there will be some English, so hopefully we'll get that implemented as the show progresses. But I will admit, before we go any further, podcast is hosted, maintained thanks to Spreaker.com. If you want to if you're interested in doing podcasting or getting started, it's one of the best sources I've found to do podcasting. And the microphone that you're hearing me use is the Blue Yeti microphone, through Blue Microphone. I do have the links in the description. The intro and the outro that you're hearing, which could change soon, I may do a change up for the new year. I'm thinking about that. Is thanks to Grimecraft. Also, if you are looking to, so I have the website itself. I use DreamHost, if I'm not mistaken. So they're kind of my hosting site for hosting the podcast to passpodcast.com. And of course, they're linked with WordPress.com. So I wanted to make sure I get all those promotions and plugs in before we get anything extreme going, because I want to, be all for my viewers and my listeners who have been my A1s, as the term goes, my A1s since day one, because it's been quite a journey. I'm gonna kind of be formatting and multitasking, so you may hear me ruffling a little bit. We're trying to get some information up and running, but life just has been going, and I've learned from doing a lot of the episodes that some things that I've done works and some things I've done has not worked. So what I'm going to be doing is trying to stick to those things that do work. And one of the things that I know this has been a challenge with doing a podcast each week. And I'm sorry, before I continue, one other thing you will notice, if you have not been able to tell already, I am flying solo. Co-host has some biz to do, so we're just gonna keep it trucking. You know how I do. You gotta just make the show work, because it's all about my listeners and making sure I get good content. One other thing, last house rule, and hopefully it doesn't impede too heavily. I am supposed to be participating in an NBA draft, so I'll be kind of working that as well as doing the show, but it's not going to affect you all getting a good show. Anyone who knows me, y'all know I'm going to be as honest as I can be and direct and telling y'all what's going on, because you all are the listeners, and without listeners, there's no show. So, and obviously with no show, there wouldn't be anything to listen to. But with that being said, we're going to get right into it. Like I said, it's a lot of topics to go into. Been a very unique week of football, to nicely put the term. I'm going to go ahead and get last week's picks while I'm doing that. Fantasy League update. I guess I'm just not meant to get a break, because if I'm Tyreek Hill and Leonard Fournette were my anger aliases from this past week of Fantasy League. Thanks to them, I pretty much got destroyed. In my mind, I thought I had a good chance, and it should have been a decent coasting week. But then, as the reality progressed, basically got auto-tuned and chopped and screwed. So in the league with my co-host, I believe I am 2-3, and the other league still defeated 0-5. It was, like I said, it was on. Initially, I had a good chance of winning, and then out of nowhere, Leonard Fournette woke up, and the rest, as they call it, is history. So we'll get into week 6 picks. I don't have any picks from my co-host. If he has provided them, then I would get some information about that. But I don't have those, so I'll be mainly doing my picks and kind of breaking down who I believe will win in the weekly matchups. But to give everyone an overview from our current standings, currently, believe it or not, last week I did better than I expected. Co-host didn't do as well. I actually went 9-4, so that did as my goal was to be achieved to get above 500. So now I'm currently 38-34. So hopefully I can keep that run going this week. And Dimitri had actually he was 5-8, so his record is 36-22. So I mean he still has a good above 500 record, which is a good thing. But I can kind of possibly creep up if I can get a good slate of wins, a good slate of games this week. So this week we got a nice wave of schedules, or a nice wave of teams playing. As you all are aware, there are a couple of teams that have bye weeks. As I go through the schedule, they'll probably pop in my head as to who has bye weeks and who does not. From looking at the schedule, I might be wrong. I believe the Bills have a bye week. The Saints have a bye week. No, the Saints don't have a bye week. Sorry. I see the Bills as one of them. The teams, they'll come to my head as I go through the show. So before I go into the weekly picks, I'm gonna go ahead and get the elephant out of the room over with first and foremost. I did do if I were picking the game for Thursday or had the ability to pick Thursday's game, I would have picked Carolina. Obviously, I would have lost, and the irony of it is Carolina showed what Carolina is able to do, which is find a way to win a game and then suddenly find a way to give a game away. It was a tale of... Normally they'll say the term is a tale of two halves, but in this game it felt like it was a tale of four quarters. And for whatever reason, Carolina forgot that the fourth quarter existed. Cam... Anyone who knows me knows I'm direct and clear in what I say when it comes to being a Carolina fan, let alone a Cam Newton fan. Cam had a solid play as far as getting the rushing touchdown, but then after that, it was mainly just small mistakes that just kind of led to bigger mistakes being made and exposure kind of speaking for itself. So that's kind of what pushed things to where they were and caused them to pretty much give the game away. I'm not using it as an excuse, so I'm not looking for any BS or any facade stories, but it just was the reality of it all. I know with Philly that it was a key matchup for both teams because both teams were coming into the game 3-1. So for Philly to walk away being 4-1 and Carolina to be 3-2, and the battle going on in our division, it just kind of hit the way it did. So I'm not going. Like I said, I'm giving that a lot more attention than expected, but that's just me being me. Y'all know how I do. So we're gonna go ahead and get into the weekly picks for this week. First and foremost, Dolphins at Falcons. Majority of the field has the Falcons, unless Matt Ryan has a weird game or something crazy happens. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to pick the Falcons for that one. Green Bay at Minnesota. I'm going to pick Green Bay. Lions at Saints. Kind of a mixed crowd on this one. I'm actually going to go Lions on this game. Patriots at Jets. Unless some crazy thing happens. I mean, it's still any given Sunday. I'm actually going to pick the Patriots. 49ers at Redskins. Redskins should have that game pretty much sewn up unless, like I said, it's a matter of, it's the 49ers, no offense, but the Redskins should get that W. Chicago at Baltimore. Normally I could pick Chicago. The challenge of picking, normally I would pick, regarding that game, it looks like it would come out better to just go ahead and say Chicago would look decent, but it's not looking that way. And I'm sorry, random brief update. I'm not going to feel as rushed to do the show now because my my NBA draft for the fantasy league got pushed back. So that's going to help you all. So I'm sorry. It's not going to cause me to rush through everything. So I do apologize for that. But going back to the matchups, Bears at Ravens. Actually going to pick the Ravens. You would think the Bears would be a good choice. Trubinsky, I believe this will be his second start, so we'll see how that all comes together. Browns at Texans. It's still the Browns. Nothing against the Browns at all. But I'm actually going to pick Houston on that one. Tampa Bay and Arizona. I will admit this should be a good matchup. As much as I don't want to pick them, and as bad as huge of a rivalry that instills, I'm going to pick Tampa Bay. This normally wouldn't be a big game, but it is for unique reasons. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so one of the other bad teams is Dallas. Because I noticed, I was like, I didn't see the star. This matchup should be one of the unique matchups coming up. The Rams at the Jags actually might surprise people and pick the Jags for this one. Leonard Fournette has been playing pretty good. Like I said last week, he exposed me in ways that I never expected, but hey, it is what it is. Steelers at Chiefs. I've picked against the Steelers a lot of times, and it's kind of burned me in the end. I understand they're playing in Kansas City, but I'm actually going to pick the Steelers. You have the Chargers at Raiders. Chargers have been playing pretty decent. I mean, they just came off of a win against the Giants, but I'm actually going to pick the Raiders. Speaking of which, the Sunday night game, Giants at Broncos. Realistically, yes, the Giants did just win a game, but they're playing the Broncos. Broncos should be the team to dominate that game. And the Monday night game, which I think will be a very strong push, Colts at Titans. Actually going to pick the Titans for that one. So those are my picks. As I share with you all the time, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I get that list conjured up to have those tracked and prepped since kickoff is a couple of hours away. So now we're getting to some huge signings that a couple of rookies have exceeded their rookie contracts, and now are ready for that that, as they call it, that new money, or that like salary based money. Because when you first come in the NBA as a rookie, you get your NBA contract, you get your rookie contract, you get a little bit of money depending on if you're a lottery pick or not. And then after that, it's kind of where the teams pick and choose, whether we're going to be keeping you here, whether you be going to another team, whatever the case may be. And Philadelphia has decided to trust the process, and I'm going to put an asterisk behind it, and I'm going to explain the deal, and I'll go over details as to why. So Embiid is going to sign the rookie scale max of 5 years worth $146.5 million. If you may or may not be aware, there was a new collective bargaining agreement. I am so sorry. That normally will never happen. All right, that's better. I apologize if y'all heard that sound. That was so unexpected. I'm like looking at the mic and it just slowly dies. But yeah, he did get the 5-year extension. He has played 31 games over 3 seasons. So it draws and generates questions as to how he would get this much money, and you really haven't seen him on the floor. The deal could be worth up to $178 million based on incentives. His guaranteed contract is $84.2 million, which is a small, he'll be in a small range based on injury circumstances. If Philadelphia goes through the process of keeping him limited to play, then that could affect him getting that max contract. For the Sixers to be able to waive him, and this is kind of where the clause comes into play, and then I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. For the Sixers to be able to waive him and hold on to any of the money, Embiid would have to miss at least 25 games due to injury while playing fewer than 1,650 minutes in any of the 4 seasons between 2018-19 and 2022-23. So his rookie contract ends this year. His new contract begins next year. And if to give everyone to perspective, you have Embiid, Wiggins was another individual. Gordon was in the midst with a rookie contract. Gordon is looking to get his new money for Orlando. He's looking at himself as being one of the best players, possibly being one of the best players in the NBA. I think it's going to come with him just getting into that role of helping or benefiting Orlando. I know I'm talking about different stories and I don't have them posted. The Wiggins story I do have. I'll talk about that in a moment and how irony plays itself out. Embiid's biggest challenge, and it's stated in this article, injuries are going to kind of be the make or break whether he, one, earns the money, or whether, two, if at any point during the contract, if Philly doesn't feel like dealing with him, it'll be, we appreciate trusting the process, but we would love to see you go elsewhere and do bigger and better things for another team. It's an odd circumstance with him, and I'm gonna go into this because I'm not gonna knock Kansas for this because they have a big man now who I believe is a sophomore. I thought he was gonna come out this year. I'm glad he didn't. Billy Preston, he's a three. He's kind of a two-way player, more of a three, could be a four. So he's not a big man, but he's in Kansas's lineup. Check Diallo that they had a couple years back. It's the history repeating itself from Kansas, and I'll explain briefly why I bring that up. But Kansas is a developing team for players. A lot of, with the one and done rule kind of being the way it is, and I don't have anything that really addresses this, but there were some sanction talks regarding Kansas with Adidas. So their name came up. Whether they're going to be part of the FBI investigation is still up for, is likely to be addressed. But that's not what we're talking about now. Embiid, at one point while he was with Kansas, was actually looking to stay after his freshman year, but he was told to leave after his freshman year, and he wouldn't really address the state as to who told him to leave. What's tough about it now is him leaving didn't really it benefited him as far as his draft stock. That's fine. That's, it is what it is. What did get affected, or what caused a major impact, was now, since he's gotten into the NBA, he's never been able to really play to his max potential with the 76ers. And it's kind of tough because Philadelphia has not gotten it right for the past couple of years. You look at Embiid, you look at Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons should be playing they've shown him in preseason games. Everything seems to be okay right now. There hasn't been any talks or address of him not playing or not, being out for so many games. But I can tell, I have a feeling that injury story will linger again. Markelle Fultz had a couple of injuries, or had an injury concern during summer camp or summer league. He's played during the preseason, but not really. They're trying to keep him healthy for regular season. There's not really a certainty as far as the cohesiveness or the chemistry with this team. And I know I'm just naming those three guys. They have other players on the team, but it's kind of a hit or miss when it comes to what you're going to see with Philadelphia. But the main piece right now, since he did just get the contract extension, is with Embiid, as far as if the process will be trusted, or this contract could just be kind of a attention pool, and in a couple of years, if it does or doesn't work out based on him playing the amount of minutes or the amount of games to get the full contract, he could be gone or could be part of a trade and wouldn't even know it. If you look back, I would say not even I would almost say this past season, having Nerlens Noel was a good player, but Nerlens Noel couldn't stay healthy. And now it's a totally different process. He's gone to Dallas, and it's a much different atmosphere and a much different way of him playing. He has Nowitzki to help him out. I think this year will be a promising year, especially for Dallas with Dennis Smith Jr. being there. I know I'm throwing a lot of names and a lot of players at you at one time, and I know we're supposed to be talking strictly about Embiid, but these are all, it kind of blends into it because, like I said, Noel previously played for Philly. And of course, I'm not going to ignore or forget the fact that Jahlil Okafor is there. Okafor was a big pickup for Philly. If you notice, he's not, after his whole little club incident or fight or whatever it was, whole ambiance, whole style changed, and you can see it in the long haul, which is what's important. I don't, like I said, I don't have an issue with the contract. I just have an issue with the process still been going. I mean, Philly has been holding their breath for this process to come together, and you can't have it come together without a healthy team, and that's kind of what the make and break is for. That's kind of been the mantra of Philly for a while, is having a healthy team. So we'll, like, as I mentioned, we're talking about contracts now. Embiid signed his contract, got paid. Another player who signed their contract, believe it or not, was Andrew Wiggins. His contract was slightly similar. He is staying with Minnesota. He's going to be looking to stay with Minnesota after the season. His contract was for 5 years, and it's nearly worth $150 million. They've kind of been, to kind of give a brief backstory, this contract negotiation has been going back and forth for a couple months. There was numbers put out there. There were so many. I guess it was the battle of years versus money versus years, things of that nature. Eventually, an agreement did come into place, and they did get that deal pulled off. Wiggins is only 22. He made the push of making the decisions on his own. Because they break it down and saying not only did the 22-year-old Wiggins not jump at the first chance to sign it, he decided to revamp the team and advisors around him and essentially lead the process himself. The signing is going to benefit them as far as like for the future, because if you look at it, Zach LaVine's gone. Zach LaVine was a good piece to have there, but he really wasn't able to get his green light like he wanted to. You have Karl Anthony Towns, who will be a very huge factor. Possibly he may make the All-Star team, depending on how picks or teams come up with that method. You have Jimmy Butler coming in with veteran leadership, and I mean, even though he's been a quiet, somebody brought up a video talking about him. Shabazz Muhammad is kind of in a unique place with Minnesota because he's not really a big star, but he does one thing that most teams need to help them kind of get through is a dirty player or a player to do the dirty work. And having that goes and helps in getting the process to get completed for the team. He did do an interview during the contract signing. I like everyone from the trainers to the coaches to the front office, my teammates. I love everybody. They treated me with nothing but nice since I got here. And they were the first people who gave me the opportunity to play in the NBA. After I got traded from Cleveland, and they welcomed me with open arms. So this is where I wanted to be at. As far as his season goes or his career, he hasn't really been injured too much. And most of the games he has been healthy for, he's played he started every game he's played in. So that tells you a lot about as far as, I know it's like night and day when it comes to Embiid, but durability is definitely second nature for him. So he'll work out fine as far as for the team. I think it just comes down to the cohesion and just mainly. And I know I emphasize the term cohesion, but Minnesota is in that unique place because if you look at it, look at it like this, and this is why anyone who knows me knows why I talk sports A to Z like this. These are the moments why. You have a Philadelphia team that's in a very weak Eastern Conference that should be able to come out as at least a 6 or 7 seed, but may not do so due to injuries or timing or whatever the case may be. And then here it is, you have a Western Conference team that's young, attempting to build, rebuild, maintain, however you want to term it. And the odds are stacked against them because you have the Rockets building their core. You have Oklahoma City with a 3-headed monster. You have Golden State with a 4-headed monster. You have San Antonio, that's always going to be the quiet, old school dark horse with Kawhi and Aldridge. It's kind of like the Kawhi. I mean, it's the Leonard Aldridge 1-2 punch right now with them. There's strong pieces that, I mean, so those are 4 teams alone that I've mentioned. I'm sorry, 4 or 5 teams alone that I've mentioned who can be in that conversation. If you look at it now, Memphis is rebuilding because I mean they've by getting Zach Randolph and Vince Carter off of their books, getting them to Sacramento, that was a change in letting you know that they're attempting to go young. I mean, Mike Conley just turned 30. You still have Marc Gasol, who's in the height of his prime. It's team like those teams are all involved and key to the equation as far as where this team can fit or where Minnesota can come into play. So, as I always say, and as the term goes, having him getting this money and him getting this opportunity is one of the best things possible. And hopefully they'll utilize him properly for this upcoming contract in renewal. I don't know what term I was trying to come up with, but yeah. So that's kind of what we are working on that. One of my stories is broken, so that's fun. But I really don't need much to say about this because this is kind of an open and shut story. And I'm going to get a better tab, a better link. I'll make sure when listening to have that addressed. So, I usually give soccer credit where it's due and give it its proper positive nod. But for whatever reason, this is one of those moments when soccer blew it. And I don't think they blew it on purpose. I think it was blown just naturally by not getting the key wins that mattered. They played against Trinidad and Tobago last week. They had an easy task. To fans, it's an easy task, but to the game and to the environment and the atmosphere and the end result, it wasn't easy. They played Trinidad and Tobago. All they had to do was tie or draw, as we call it, or win the game. And they would have made the U.S. World Cup. They conceded the first goal, which already was a bad sign. Then U.S. kind of came back, tied the game. Looks like it was a good chance, a good hope. And then in the midst and out of the blue, U.S. gave up another goal, conceded another goal or whatever, and they ended up losing 2-1. So there were a lot of questions and a lot of concerns and a lot of accountability being put on the table as far as this all went down. In the long haul and in the immediate presentation, the men's coach decided to go ahead and resign. One of the assistant coaches, he decided that he wasn't going to resign. He stayed. I mean, it's not really much to stay for, but he stayed. It just looks bad. I mean, I'm not sitting here. Okay, so I'm going to say this, and this is me talking soccer, but also talking truthful. U.S. is not one of the greatest teams when it comes to soccer, but U.S. has a core team. Should easily be able to generate a core team based on the talent we have generated through the MLS. Yes, I know the MLS has a lot of international players as well, but the MLS has a lot of American or U.S. born players that should be able to get us, quote unquote, over the hump or get us through that wall. Obviously, that didn't happen, and the nicest way of putting it is that we dropped the ball. So I'm not going to, like I said, this is one of those stories that I would have a tab like, and what I'm going to do, just to be fair, to be transparent, I have, like I said, there's a tab. I'll add it. I may add one. I may not. The tab that I initially had is for Wall Street Journal, and of course, if anyone knows, most sites you may have to do a subscription or something of that sort to get the full service of full page viewing. And we don't have that, so we're not going to even go through all that phase. Returning and addressing football briefly. Actually, we have a couple of one other football story, and then we have some fun tech talk to get into. Speaking on football, and last week for football was rough, but it was very rough when it came to a couple of injuries that occurred. They confirmed that both Odell Beckham, top wide receiver for the New York Giants, and J.J. Watt, who is one of the linemen for the Houston Texans, are both out for the season. Odell Beckham is going to have surgery on his left ankle. He injured it during the matchup with the Chargers, and he was it was an unexpected occurrence. He landed a Charger defender landed on his ankle following a short route in the fourth quarter. You could tell as soon as he went down, Beckham was hurt. Like, it was not even a question, a hesitation of he was in pain, and it definitely was a serious or a critical injury. He did have an issue with the injury or spraining his ankle in preseason against the Browns back in August. They kind of brushed it off like it wasn't a big deal at the time, but I think now it's starting to catch up, or it did catch up. And now it's a huge setback for him. As I mentioned earlier, the team is 0-5, so having him out of the lineup is going to be a huge blow to the Giants. And they're also having a couple of, I know Brandon Marshall is likely going to be out for the remainder of the season, which, whether he says it or whether we want to claim it or admit it, it's a strong chance that he could be going for, could be retiring after this season. So we'll see what happens, and we'll keep an eye on that story with the Giants. Like I said, Beckham, you won't see him. I mean, I think the toughest part for him with getting him on your team in through the draft, if you're doing fantasy league, you really don't have a way to just waive him or drop him because he's an untradeable player. The only option I think most teams have is they can place him on the bench and just kind of throw wideouts in and out as needed. So, for the Texans, 3-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He only played 3 games last season. J.J. Watt was hurt. It was a huge hit. He was diagnosed with a tibial plateau fracture. He's, and it's kind of ironic. I ain't gonna say ironic, but it's a unique circumstance because, his first 5 seasons, he started all 85 games with the Texans, and he played 5 postseason matches. He did produce or generate 79.5 sacks, and he was the Texans had been top 9 in scoring defense 4 times, and in the top 7 in total defense 4 times. It's going to be healing and it's going to be tough for him, but it was time. And I mean, I'm not saying it was time like he died or something, but it's a huge blow to the organization. But you'd rather have him go through have the injury, get the proper healing, the proper rehab, things of that sort, surgery, and then come back at full health or full strength. So hopefully this will kind of come and go, and it won't be as big. But having it happen, it was just at a tough one this season. So we'll see how it all goes down for Houston as well as the Giants. I'm hoping the Giants can at least get 2 or 3 wins. I mean, they've kind of rambled and ran through most of their division, so they have a couple of games that have kind of been hit or miss. But it's this is everything's about timing, and everything's about just when and how things kind of went down. So we'll keep an eye on that story and keeping up with that for future information. This was a weird trade, and I'm gonna go ahead and address it because it did happen. But I guess the Cardinals have a plan. Cardinals are proving that we're going old. You have Carson Palmer, who's up there. He's everyone knows Carson Palmer as a Cardinal, But a lot of people who really remember Carson Palmer remembers him playing with Hushmanzada, with Chad Johnson, with those names. You think of not Adrian Peterson. You think of Larry Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald was there. He's been with Arizona when Kurt Warner was there, getting ready to get to the end of his career. He was there with Danny Green, during his coaching tenure. Everything kind of just going down the way it has and just kind of being processed the way it has. And here it is now. We have a running back situation coming into play where I guess New Orleans really didn't know how to use Peterson. I don't know. They went ahead and let him go or traded him to Arizona for this undisclosed 2018 draft pick. And by doing this trade, this then kind of implemented that Chris Johnson was going to be released from Arizona. Don't know how to feel about it because, as I always say, Father Time is undefeated. The internet's a close second, but Father Time is indeed undefeated. The Saints will receive a conditional. So to give details, they're saying that the Saints will receive a conditional 2018 sixth round pick from the Cardinals in compensation. The Cardinals' running game has been a major weakness since David Johnson had a fractured wrist in Week 1, so they were trying to look for a replacement of him. They're last in rushing yards per game and per carry. They initially had signed Chris Johnson, but injuries to the left side of Arizona's O-line prevents the Cards' running game from finding a footing. Enter Adrian Peterson. Cardinals are currently 2-3. They literally only ran for 31 yards last Sunday against the Eagles in their 34-7 loss. The key impact is blocking. Adrian Peterson's 32. So if you look at that in football age, it's young, but it's not young. And then you also look at it in running back age, he's up there. So if he can give them 1 or 2 solid years, then that's something. But we'll have to kind of keep an eye on where this trade or whether this move will benefit them in the long haul. I personally don't see. I see Adrian Peterson being a good fit, but I don't see him being a major piece to the puzzle, in my personal opinion. But that's me. I could be looking at it wrong. I may be seeing something different than what the fan or the everyday person may be noticing, but that's just where I stand about looking at the story. So that is all of my sports topics. I have a couple more. Well, I have other sports topics that I'll be discussing, but it'll be kind of like that wedge of sports and stuff put into one topic, and I'll explain what I mean in saying that with these upcoming topics. But it will be kind of like wedging the sports and stuff together, and then you'll get stuff towards the end. Have some fun 2% or random stories that I'll share with you about stuff that I'll get into in a moment. So Alexa, aka Amazon Echo, aka Amazon Smart Technology, is going to be implementing the NBA into their device. Thankfully, I'm not using or not doing my podcast at home, because normally the minute I say Alexa, it would start recording or start picking up. I'm afraid to do Hey Siri because one of my devices will probably go off, which of course it did. I figured my phone would do it. One of them will do it. Yeah, okay. And it's just recording everything that I'm saying, so that's confirmation. Before I go into this brief update, since the iOS 11 update, there have been a couple of bug fixes. So if you have any tech devices that are using the iOS 11, i.e. iPads, latest iPod Touches, iPhone 6, 7, 8, or if you've already gotten your X, make sure you have the latest iOS update. There are some little bugs that they did go back to get resolved and get taken care of. So I just want to make sure I address that with everyone before going any further. But the Alexa skill will be placed for all 30 NBA teams. So basically, The virtual assistant will serve more detailed information on every team in the league. They're going to have their own skills for each team. You can ask for things like the date of the next home game, who does your team play on a specific date, if they're winning, stats, standings. You can, and you'll basically be, so the way of saying it, which I have yet to try because I have an Alexa, or I have an Echo. You would say, Alexa, ask the Charlotte Hornets, and you'll state that, and then it'll say, Alexa, enable, will activate the skill for a team. So if I say, Alexa, enable Houston Rockets, then that would set up everything for the Houston Rockets information to be put into my Alexa and pick up on any upcoming games, any schedules, things of that nature, or who do the Rockets play, this, that, and the third. The NBA says the first pro sports league to make every team available through Alexa. What's more, the NBA regular season starts this week actually. So you got plenty of time to enable skill for your favorite teams before the action begins. So if it's different teams you want to keep up with, like if for me, for instance, since I'm a Houston fan, I would keep up with Houston. And then locally, I would probably keep up with the Wizards. And that would be it. And you can get detailed information as far as injuries, everything that's necessary to keep track on your team. So I think that's a nifty feature. It's a unique tech, but it's something that people wouldn't think of even implementing on a day-to-day basis, but it is there for your using. So I am now going to get into I don't want to call this a touchy subject, but it's the reality of the beast, if you want to call it that. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and it's important to emphasize how key it is when giving your thoughts or your opinions on things that you may or may not agree with in social media land, I will call it. No one is saying that anything or what anyone does online or offline is right or wrong. But on the opposite end of it, you have to be sure if you say or do something that you're able to accept the consequences that comes with it. A lot of people, and I'm gonna, so as a podcaster, as a blogger, as an expresser, as a quote unquote, I'm not gonna say First Amendment person because that's way too in depth and it's not that serious. You have every right to say and speak on anything at any point. What's not presented and what's forgotten in that lost in translation is that you also have to remember that as a person or as a business, you have a brand. And you can sometimes impact your brand by making comments or addressing things in a manner that might or might not be to the liking of those who are listening. Yeah, I'm giving that as a long-ended random ramble, but I'm going to explain where or how that came into play. So first and foremost, Jemele Hill currently has been suspended by ESPN based on a response she gave to Jerry Jones. Joe Budden talked about this in his podcast, so I'm going to be a little different in my approach, but I'm going to be as unbiased and clean in what I'm about to say. Jerry Jones basically said that he would bench any players who disrespect the flag. Change happens when advertisers are impacted. If you feel strongly about JJ's statement, boycott his advertisements. She then clarified that she was not calling for an NFL boycott, but she was pointing out the unfair burden placed upon players. She also noted that some fans who supported players kneeling during the national anthem were continuing to watch NFL games. So this then ties into my next point, or this ties into something that really has not been addressed and talked about. Because here it is, week 6. And as far as everyone who said, oh, I'm not watching football, I'm not going to support the sport, Some people I've heard and seen like, okay, they really aren't watching. I got you. I believe you. I'm with you. I'm for you. I'm by you and beside you. And then there are those who said they weren't going to watch and have pretty much been socially active after the fact, along with, even though they may not watch the game, they're keeping up with stories related to football. So it's kind of I'm supporting, but I'm doing so in my own way. And I get that. So what I want to come clean and saying, and what I feel like there's a point to really look at in doing this is Jemele Hill is a very and I'm gonna, Joe, Mr. Button, however you want to term it, I'm gonna kind of pull a page from your playbook and point this out because it's a very valid statement when it comes to ESPN. If you go back over the years, ESPN was pretty dry. ESPN needed some life, needed some flair, they needed some pizzazz, some wow, something. So you bring in pizzazz and wow. Pizzazz and wow at the moment in that era would be considered a Stuart Scott. Stuart Scott comes along, cool as the other side of the pillow. Many references. That's the one that I always know. Booyah. Like all of his terms and his phrases are coined and have stuck with the brand of ESPN for quite some time. Tough times happen. Not the best news to share, but addressing it anyway. Stuart Scott passes. ESPN is trying to get their identity still in a maintainable atmosphere, a maintainable environment. You have Jemele Hill, you have Michael Smith. Michael Smith made a few appearances on ESPN from time to time. Jemele Hill, if I'm correctly presenting it, was a beat writer with Michigan. She was a Michigan State alum. And she's a journalist by nature. They would have her do a few editorials here and there, but eventually it's, hey, we want to get you in the eyes of the viewers. Start you off. We do ESPN. It wasn't Cold Pizza and it wasn't First Take. It was like hit. They've done hit. They did his and hers. They renamed it. I forgot what the original name was, but they were doing that show. Show was a success. It rocked, it rolled. Push them to ESPN and say, hey, we're going to give you a section at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. section rolls. You've gotten everything you've gotten out of them. And now it's the expression factor of you're part of ESPN. You have to be cordial and cautious in what you say. This was a cordial and cautious what you say moment. Don't get me wrong. I'm not downplaying what was said or how it was presented. And ESPN then presented that she was suspended for a second violation. So I'm kind of reading this so I can make sure I don't throw the information to you and not give you the exact purpose or blending of everything. Second violation of our social media guidelines. She will not appear on television for the next 2 weeks. A spokesman for the company declined to say which specific guidelines she violated. She previously acknowledged letting her colleagues and company down with an impulsive tweet. She did not appear on Monday Night Sports Center. And Michael Smith also boycotted and not participating. Matt Barry did the show alone. They called it SC6 since that is a 6 p.m. stint. They have an interesting tweet that I'm going to get into, or interesting discussion regarding Mike Pence, which was very much of a fail. The main factor is it's a huge challenge when it comes to this being handled or looked at the right way. So I'm gonna shift gears for good reason, and I'll go over this to give everyone a better understanding. People are boycotting the NFL. People are taking a knee. Folks are taking a stand. People are not watching games, etc., etc. Multiple things going on with the NFL. The amazing part about all of this is, I'm sorry, and I can't forget Trump, Pence. I'll talk about Pence later because he was a shoo-in for ass of the week. I'm just telling y'all that in advance. But the choice was made and the decision was clear that we want to go ahead and everyone was boycotting or trying to give their stance, but no one is looking at what this was all being done for. And what's amazing about it is the initial assumption or perception is that it has to do with the national anthem. It does, but it doesn't. It does because of the fact that what's being stated in the national anthem isn't applied. That part is where it's on point. What's not is they don't. It's almost as though, and now because the NFL, and this might not even have anything to do with the not portion of it, but this is what the NFL presented, or some people have looked at as an idea, which is, well, if the NFL is on TV, or when games come on TV, when they do the national anthem, don't show the national anthem. Don't show anyone kneeling. That's gonna get the attention, and that's gonna generate the acceptance that we're moving forward and we're all about having football. Yes and no. And I only say yes and no because you really, if a fan is going to have in their mind what they have or haven't seen, I mean, we go back a couple weeks ago. If we look at DirecTV with people ending subscriptions for NFL, or not even just DirecTV, but just people ending their NFL network, NFL packages, NFL networks, things, stuff like that, just to not have to watch the NFL because they don't want to watch it or have to face it. Yeah, you're not going to have to face or deal with those issues. But then there's still other issues that are going on that are going to happen that you can't run away from or hide from regardless. And that's where you kind of have to wake up and just really accept life for what it is, I guess is my best way of putting it. So I mentioned this earlier. Michael Smith did state that he's looking to host the show solo during the stint. He really doesn't want anyone to co-host. He's still kind of like standing in support of her in her decision. Of course, ESPN isn't too fond of it, but then it's kind of like a hit or miss because if you take their section out and really put someone in, like I said, ESPN is losing money left and right. Like right now, ESPN, whether people want to really admit it or not, ESPN is competing with Bleacher Report. Bottom line. Hate to say it that way, but that's just kind of what it is. At first, ESPN was a worldwide leader in sports. ESPN was affiliated with ABC. ABC was a worldwide leader in sports. ESPN came in with the revolution of, hey, we're changing sports and we're bringing sports to you as it happens. Getting highlights, you get highlights as tough pulls. Joe Budden said this as well. It can be down to something as small as NHL. It could be hockey season. And you really don't get much hockey information. Like, it's very limited. Like, they will spend an entire hour talking about football on Wednesday, and the games were on Sunday. They'll talk about Sunday's games on Wednesday or things that have come up from Sunday because they're trying to get information. Whereas you have Bleacher Report, even though Bleacher Report isn't an actual TV show or a channel, Bleacher Report is just basically able to give you information. Like, I can sit and look at my phone and get a story. Wouldn't be surprised if one has hit my phone in the last few days. But yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things. Like, it's not as A to Z or cut and dry as people expect it to be with this process with what's going on. Do I think Jemele Hill was so? This was brought up on Joe's podcast, and I'm gonna bring it up on mine. Do I think that Jemele Hill will come back to ESPN? Personally, I don't. I honestly don't believe so. And I'm not saying it based on them saying it and just saying, oh, I'm in agreement. I really don't think she is. Will she join the likes of Fox? That's possible. If you really look at, like, if you go back and look at it, and it's even the fact that the fact that a song has been made based on Shannon Sharp's rant about Miles and the yak or that Hennessy, that tells you a lot. Like, Fox is not missing the mark. Because if you look at it, there's nothing. It's nothing against Skip. Skip balances the show with Shannon. I will be the first to come clean and saying, even if Shannon went to ESPN or Stephen A. came to Fox, you couldn't put Shannon and Stephen A. in a show. It would be way too much. So that's where your balance comes into play. Now, granted, Max Kellerman or Max Keller or whatever, he's okay, but it's Max. I don't really know how else to really say or put that one, but that's kind of what it is. I know I have stories and topics that I did put in the podcast links, but I'm just sharing these and addressing how I'm looking at this full story with Jemele Hill. Twitter's the gift and the curse, and until true fans of the sport, let alone true people of the storyline, know what's going on. And this is another thing. I'm gonna say this, and then I'm gonna go into my next wave of topics. Do your research or know what you're talking about before you go into social media rambling or ranting. Sometimes we try to call ourselves, relating or understanding where something comes from or what's going on, but we really don't get it until it's literally too late. And then we're trying to call ourselves feeling, sounding, or being professional or making a statement. And I'm going to say this. And I know this is probably like one of my most... This is probably... Like, I haven't done these in a while. But this might be one of my most chill podcasts that I'm going to just be as blunt and as direct as I can. If you are going to make a strong point or make a detailed argument and or discussion on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or wherever, before you hit OK, before you hit send, submit, whatever the case may be, proofread. Proofreading goes a very long way. I have learned and I've accepted, and I think now because I've gotten to this point where I'm just burned out about social media, at one time I used to try to correct people. Now I'm like, you know what? Let them talk reckless. Let them act like they know what they're talking about. Let them pray that what they're saying makes sense. And if they want any feedback or any tips, I'll give them as needed. But lately, I'm over it. Like, I can't. I'm tired. I'm almost tired, and I'm almost like drained, burned out about it. So, that's my best thing I can say regarding that whole story. I don't, I understand Jemele gave an opinion. I feel like you should be able to express or give feedback on certain things. You just have to be cordial and cautious in what you say. And also knowing that you are a face. I'm not going to say the face, but one of the many faces of ESPN. And I mentioned that in my previous podcast, and I'm sticking to that now. Like, saying or presenting certain ideas or thoughts, yes, you have your right and you have your feelings to give or express on whatever is in your mind, your heart, your soul, your body, your spirit, whatever. But also know in doing so, there's a risk in doing that. Whether it's the risk of your job, whether it's the risk of your future, whatever risk it is, just know that risk comes with doing so. So that's all I got on that. I know that was like way more than expected to address that one topic, but I wanted to get that out of my system before I lose my mind. No, actually, I wasn't going to lose my mind. I wanted to share that with y'all because it has been something I've thought about for a while. So this is like I said, I mentioned it's sports and stuff, and now this is the stuff. So I really didn't get a lot of tech talk that was going down. So I'm gonna ramble a little bit, and then I'll have the story that I have shared, and then we'll jump into Ass of the Week and we'll go from there. But the tech world has been in a very unique state. As I mentioned last week, we did go through a couple weeks ago we had Amazon. Last week it was Google. Coming up right now, we're in our fighting game stages. Like, there are a lot of fighting game tournaments going on. Someone, and I'm hoping she may or may not listen to the podcast, and if so, either way, I understand. But I'm going to share this and I'm going to address this because it's relevant to know and relevant to discuss. There's a huge discussion or a huge presentation when it comes to the gaming communities that exist in the gaming world. You have the fighting game community, which a lot of people don't realize fighting game is an umbrella by itself. And then there are other little umbrellas or little groups under fighting game community. Street Fighter, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, Injustice, Smash Brothers, Pokemon. All of these tournaments that go on for different events. At different events, some of them get major attention, aka Evo, CEO, SoCal Regionals, and then there are those small events. The term that I always come up with is the small tournaments. I refer to GameStop or just the little places that have an event going on, but may or may not be telling anyone, hey, we got a tournament coming up. Like, the easiest but the hardest tournaments to set up, run, maintain. And sorry y'all hear my stomach. I haven't eaten really in a while. But the smallest, easiest yet hardest tournaments to do are those little tournaments like a Madden tournament or an NBA 2K tournament in a local town, and getting the banners, the advertisements, the networking, the social media out there to let people know. Because most of the time, the way that those are presented is either one of two ways. It's either word of mouth, or somebody may have happened to have a Facebook page that had an event that discussed it, or it would just be a matter of how it's presented or posted. So it's not the factor of you having the news or having the events. Events are gonna happen. Like, there's eating contests that go on all the time. I'm looking at Bar Rescue, so sorry, but there are eating contests that go on all the time. Those eating contests aren't gonna be like major waves. Like, hey, let's put this on NBC, have an event for it. Just like going back to the Street Fighter tournaments. Street Fighter tournaments, most people know about them primarily because they come on Twitch. Half of the world has no idea what Twitch is. And part of the reason why they don't know about Twitch is because either one, is not of interest to them, or number two, they're gamers, but they're not sure what the benefit is of watching somebody. Like, a lot of people really have that logic or that theory of, why would I want to watch someone else stream? So there's just something to think about or something to look at when it comes to how the gaming community is. There were tournaments for season 3 of Capcom Pro Tour. So those tournaments have been going on. I've been keeping up as best as I can, but it's so many that trying to just keep up with them as they happen is next to impossible. So I just try to catch what I can. But I just wanted to get that little rant and rave or ramble off my chest, because it was something that I was thinking about in being addressed. So this isn't really a long story. This is a 2% story, but I am sharing this with you all because it did come up in my timeline, and it's just it's what I define as, I won't even say 2%. It's those who are wanting to have flashback moments will have a flashback moment thinking about this story. So go back to 1993, 1994, I'll even say 95, We'll go back to the time when Windows 95 was a thing and it was popping and everybody was using Windows 95. Go back to when you had dial-up. Go back to when you would try to get on the internet and you were going through your internet service. Not Bluetooth, what is it? I can't think of the name. It's the blue plate or blue light. Not blue light, not Juno, not Net Zero, not Earthlink. Go back to AOL. So AOL's platform is still in existence to this day. Whenever you talk to people about AOL, the first thing that they think of is AOL Instant Messenger. I can always remember and always think about my account, Skrillaman2K, which was reactivated recently. The news, which isn't really even tragic, but just reality, is that AOL Instant Messenger will be null and void and non-existent effective December the 15th. So anybody who got to get those last messages, that was before DMs was even a thing. That was the messenger program of all time. If it wasn't for AOL Messenger, you wouldn't have Yahoo Messenger. I think people still use Yahoo Messenger. I'm not sure. But AIM was everything. But yeah, it's no longer in service. You still will have access to the AOL mail. I would not be surprised if that goes away soon as well. Because if you look at it, you're looking at about 20 years, give or take, if not longer, with that service being in existence. AOL is still up and running. People still have AOL as their go-to. So it's, as the saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But Messenger really isn't used anymore. To be honest, I'm surprised BBM pens are still in existence. They were trying it and it seemed like it was going to be an idea and it worked at one point. But now it's not really something that people use anymore. So I wanted to go ahead and share that with you all. It was a story that I would have initially shared last week, but based on timing and I wasn't really sure when I would get the exact opportunity to do so. But luckily I did go ahead and implement it into this week's episode. And just like the article that I have shared states, before there was texting or DMs or Snapchat, an entire generation grew up using AOL Instant Messenger. It's probably why we all took texting so well, which is true. Because AOL Instant Messenger was chatting. You were on a keyboard and you just going to town, just writing, expressing everything that you needed to say. And as time progressed, it turned into, now once texting was a thing, like you think starting out, we had to go through, and I'm not, this isn't on this whole, I'm showing my age thing. Cause I was talking about some of this at work yesterday. You would have some people who would sit and do, have messages that, they would sit down there and get, page with people receiving pages from each other. Oh yeah, I paged this person. I paged them and waited for them to call me back. And they had to go to a payphone. Then you had SkyTel two-way pages and, everything just changed. So it's just a matter of time. Like AOL Instant Messenger isn't really, like no one really uses a chat service anymore that I know of. I could be wrong, but as far as I know, haven't really seen many people using the chat service. So that is that story. We'll now get into our artist spotlight. I was in limbo or kind of a tweener on how to address who I was going to have. Because I know last week I kind of I ain't going to say skipped it, but I really didn't address or discuss much with artist spotlight. I was like, oh, I'm not, because I was in limbo whether I would keep it as a feature. But I am going to keep it in the mix. And what'll happen is, and I'll be transparent in telling y'all this. If there is a artist that I feel is worth sharing, I will go ahead and share it and put that out there. I just want to get away from, I think my goal and my objective is to get away from old school artists. And that's nothing against the old school. A lot of people who are listening to the podcast may or may not know about any of the new, any of these artists now that from that time era, but without them, we wouldn't have a lot of the Group Boyz II Men was the most commercially successful R&B group of all time, and that was per RIAA. They showed a lot of records that involved three of the longest running number one pop singles in history. They did it as a unit. Their 4-part harmonies blended so smoothly. They were among the first male R&B artists to adopt the sort of hyper-technical melodic embellishments that were popularized by various divas such as the great Whitney Houston and the formerly could sing Mariah Carey. Sorry, I'm being petty. Their early music was kind of indebted to that New Jack Swing, but the group found their forte in lush, soulful ballads, and then their harmonies showcased to their greatest effect. They haven't duplicated their incredible early 90s commercial success, but they have remained relevant even as mainstream R&B has devalued vocal groups. They were formed in 1988 at Philadelphia's High School of Creative and Performing Arts. The founding members, Nathan Morris and Mark Nelson, were singing together for a couple of years, but they had difficulty of trying to get their group together just due to members and graduation at the school. They finally did stabilize when they got their other two members, Wanya Morris, Sean Stockman, and their bass vocalist Michael McCary. They were initially known as, and I like sharing these because you learn what the group name was called before they became the group. Their initial name was known as Unique Attraction. They were a quintet that performed that did a well received Valentine's Day show for the school and had a rep that leaned heavily on New Edition songs. They did the song, one of which Boyz II Men gave them their name. The big break came in '89 when they snuck backstage at a Biv DeVoe concert, ties in the New Edition, of course, and surprised Michael Bivins with an a cappella version of "Can You Stand the Rain," and then they were offered a deal right there. If you actually go, and this is kind of random, if you go and look at the New Edition video or the New Edition movie, that was addressed as how Boyz II Men kind of did come to them for an appearance at that time. They were down to a Nelson wouldn't stick around, and I'm sorry. So their bass vocalist did stay. Mark Nelson then left. Personality conflicts led to departure. He then became a member of As Yet. Boyz II Men entered into the studio to record their first album called Coolie High Harmony with Motown Records. They were backed by the New Jack production, then in vogue. They dubbed their sound hip hop doo-wop. Through a vocal harmony group, they were more indebted to R&B. They were more indebted to R&B of the 60s and the 70s. So it was like the retro flair. Coolie High Harmony then released in '91, had the hit single Motown Philly, topped the charts. They did the acapella ballad "It's So Hard to Say Goodbye," which was covered through the song Coolie High, from the movie Coolie High. And then they joined MC Hammer's Too Legit to Quit tour in '92. Tragedy struck when the tour manager was shot and killed in Chicago. And that song, "It's So Hard to Say Goodbye," was dedicated to him. The tragedy had was somewhat of a beginning to their career, which was it's a good yet bad way to put it, because it was, sometimes it takes losing someone to gain something else. But they were able to foreshadow the group's Midas touch over the gigs. They cut a smooth track with Babyface called "End of the Road," which was for the soundtrack Boomerang. It didn't become a blockbuster, but one of the biggest hits in history. Spent 13 weeks as number one on the pop charts, and took the record of 11 weeks that Elvis Presley had back in '56 with the double-sided single "Don't Be Cruel, Hound Dog." End of the Road did win a slew of awards and cemented Boyz II Men star status beyond any doubt. While crafting their next album during '93, the group did release a couple of placeholders, a top 5 of the 5 Satan's doo-wop classic in the Still of the Night from the movie The Jacksons, an American Dream, and a holiday album Christmas Interpretations. During that same year, Whitney Houston's "I Will Always Love You" broke End of the Road's record with 14 weeks at number one. After the End of the Road buzz kind of died down, it was able to help them work on their next album, which was called 2, Roman numeral 2. It was an instant smash and arrived in '94. It didn't include End of the Road. It was produced by Babyface and Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, and anyone who knows old school music knows those names. Let's see. First single, "I'll Make Love to You," easily moved up the charts, tied Whitney Houston's record of 14 weeks as the number one track. Let's see. Then they did a follow-up single on Bended Knee, which replaced "I'll Make Love to You" at number one for a 6-week run of its own. Only Elvis and the Beatles had ever replaced themselves as number one, so that tells you a lot with this group. Thank You was a relative flop, not quite making the top 20, but Water Runs Dry returned them back to the top 5, falling one slot short of number one. They spent much of '95 touring the U.S. and beyond, in support of 2, but it also opened up their own recording studio. They spent time working on recording collaborations with other artists. Wanya Morris debuted Brandy on the hit "Broken Hearted." The group sang on Michael Jackson's "History" and LL Cool J's "Hey Lover." The biggest one, however, was a song done by Mariah Carey called "One Sweet Day." If anyone knows music, go back. Like a lot of these songs that I'm mentioning, just naming off the top of my head, you'll definitely want to go back and listen. Like if you listen to these songs, it would surprise you like how big they were. Let's see. That song went on to spend 16 weeks in number one on the pop chart, debuting there in December of '95. It was the third such record-setting single by the group's career. Over the group's objections, Motown then released a piece of cash-in product titled "The Remix Collection" in late '95. It was then in retaliation, Boyz signed a distribution deal with Sony for their new vanity label, Stone Creek. It was the beginning of a souring relationship that only worsened upon the release of their next album, Evolution. The record started out strong, debuting at number one and sending 4 Seasons of Loneliness to the same position on the singles charts. It had a top 10 follow-up song for Mama. Gave them their record-setting 7th platinum single. Motown was unable to throw its full promotional music muscle behind the record due to the transition of the album of the record label choice. Evolution didn't have the shelf life of 2. It only sold 2 million copies. They were then forced to postpone parts of their supporting tour when Wanya Morris had a benign polyp on his vocal cords. He recovered just fine though, and in '99, the group had their contract transferred from Motown to Universal. And from there, I mean, they released a couple more albums. They did do the resulting record. For the next album, they assumed greater control over songwriting and production. The resulting record, Nathan, Michael, Sean, Wanya, was released in 2000, which had their first names on it. Went gold, produced a smaller scale hit and Pass You By. In summer of 2002, they kept their sophisticated approach for the aptly titled released Full Circle. McCary left the group in 2003 due to problems with scoliosis. The remaining members released an album called Throwback. And in 2006, The Remedy was initially only available in Japan until a year later when it was released through the website. A tribute album, Motown: A Journey Through Hitsville, USA, was released in 2007. It featured production from Randy Jackson, plus an acapella version of End of the Road. So if you pick up on the theme, they did a lot of acapella tracks, which not every artist can do, because most times an artist feels they sound better with background and noise and bells and whistles and all that stuff. During the 2010s, they continued to tour and recorded with support from various independent major labels. They marked their 20th anniversary in 2011 with an album called 20. It offered a set of new material and a collection of re-recordings. 3 years later, the trio did return with Collide, a stylistically diverse set of originals written by collaborators. Under the Streetlight then was released through Sony Masterworks in 2017, or this year, which had 3 songs recorded with longtime peer Brian McKnight and one made with the vocal group Take 6. So Boyz II Men was a very active group. They were that group that no one really expected to make the charts the way they did, but they were like that true foundation for group. I would call it group R&B groups, or male R&B groups rather. Before I get chewed out and spit out, New Edition was popping. New Edition was like 80s, like late 80s, early 90s. The torch quietly was passed over. If you really look at music and pay attention to what happened, that's literally what occurred. Is that it was mainly it was one group's time to shine. They would come out with their albums. Another group would come out during that time period that group was on the scene. The initial group would kind of phase away, and then a new group would come in and take over. So that's the artist spotlight this week. I am hoping to have a even more unique artist spotlight for next week, and I'll definitely be getting those going as the weeks progress. Now, my favorite part of the podcast, because I have been dying to get into some of this foolishness that has gone on in the sports world, the tech world, just the world, period. So the first article that I'm going to get into involves a former basketball player known as Agent Zero, aka Gilbert Arenas, and the other person in explicit content warning. I'm going to go ahead and it's not going to really be too explicit because it's not like I'm talking about what she personally does. But a former porn star, Mia Khalifa, they're joining forces. They're going to be on a show together, and they will be working on a show for Complex that is called Out of Bounds. It is actually scheduled to premiere on tomorrow on their YouTube channel. It's supposed to be bringing the comments to real life about the sports world. So I'm going to tell you why they're ads of the week. Because normally this would just be, they're doing a show together, cool. It's going to be on Complex. And it was ironic because, like I tell y'all, I listen to Joe Buttons. I'm getting back to listening to podcasts again. And I was listening to Joe's podcast, and he kind of did a shameless plug of the show, but he didn't really give too much information detailing what would be going on. So I thought that was funny. But I'm going to share why this is Ass of the Week. So anyone who may or may not know the story of Mia Khalifa. Mia Khalifa, first and foremost, she's like known for being in the DC area. Big Wizards fan. She kind of regained 15 minutes of fame thanks to thanks to the Washington Wizards in the WNBA, in the NBA playoffs. Sorry, and so she's mainly always talking about how people are in her DMs or sending her messages on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever, and she ain't in the mood for all that, and she ain't got time for it. This, that, and the third. Well, what was ironic was, not too long before this announcement was made, she was trying to send Gilbert Arenas a lot of messages to get his attention. He never responded, but then he put a screenshot up showing that all of these messages were sent to him from her. And then a couple of days later, here it is, y'all doing a show together. So it's like, I felt like it was a marketing ploy, but it was a weird way of doing a marketing ploy. Like, I get it, but it was a one-off for me. Do I think the show can work? Complex News to me is turning into it's the Bleacher Report. It's the Bleacher Report of YouTube, but you get stories about everything that's going on in pop culture, media, things of that nature on the fly. So if it's like, hey, I need a quick story, I need to find out what happened in this sport or in this event, that's kind of your go-to to get that accomplished. And it's very achievable, very attainable. Everything's everything. So I understand it. I get it. I just found it funny that it's like it happened now. Because before, you really didn't hear, or it didn't really get that much attention compared to how it does now. But I see where they're going. I think that it's the true definition of a one-off, but it can work to their advantage if they know how to use it. All I really can say is I'm looking forward to what's in store. That's kind of my nicest way of putting it. All right, so what I'm going to do real quick is I'm just going to take a very brief break, and then I'm going to come back and we'll continue the remainder of the podcast. My bad, y'all. I truly do apologize. I wanted to make sure that I gave y'all my undivided attention after I was thinking even after doing the fantasy league an hour late, it would make a difference, but I still was kind of lingering a little longer, and I know part of it was talking about the Jemele story. But we do want to continue with episode 132. So, as I mentioned earlier, and it's kind of ironic, I didn't realize my episode is the same number as Joe's. Because he was like, yeah, episode 132. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm at the same number. I didn't know it. Anyway, shout out to Joe Budden. I'm sorry. I know I mentioned him a lot, but I'll share the link to his podcast. I'll look it up and I'll definitely share it with you all. Because if you want a good, like I'm in the work in progress stage. If you want to take notes and here's what you really should be doing, listen to his podcast. And by far, if you're able to, if they more than likely it would be, check it out on YouTube. He keeps it really, really, really true to his form. That's my best and perfect way of describing it. But yeah, as I mentioned, Mia Khalifa and Gilbert Arenas are joining forces to do a show, kind of giving you the sports culture. I'm not sure how to feel about it yet. Like I said, I'm not even gonna say it's got to grow me because it starts tomorrow. So it's kind of gonna be, if I watch a couple of times and I like it, cool. If I don't, then oh well. But we'll just kind of let it see how that all comes together and what they're planning to be all about when it's all said and done. So going away from that story, our next ass of the week was literally he set his place at the throne as soon as he made as soon as this story made waves. Basically, Chris Forrester resigned from the Miami Dolphins organization. He is the offensive line coach. Due to 12-hour, he resigned after a video surfaced 12 hours after a video surfaced of him doing a line of a substance, a white powder substance. We don't want to use the exact term because everything's going back to what I mentioned earlier. It's all about PR and not saying or doing the wrong things for presentation. So, the video was posted on Facebook by Las Vegas model Kiwana Nige. Showed him sniffing a white powder in a rolled up $20 bill. The fact they knew there was a $20 bill tells everything. Because I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's a zero. Like, it could have been 100, but I guess it was. Well, it makes sense to me if you look at the bill. But anyway, we were made aware of the video last night and have no tolerance for this behavior. After speaking with Chris this morning, he accepted full responsibility, and we accepted his resignation effective immediately. He's no longer with the organization, but we will work to get him the help he needs during this time. Because the truth of the matter is, and this is kind of like the mild way of saying it, it's social media, it's the internet, it's, as I always say, it's undefeated. The picture and the video and the storyline was going to leak. It was just a matter of if and when. So that portion of it, having it leak is one thing. But the other side of it is, as soon as it leaked, he was, they wasted no time and went ahead and resigned. Had him force him to resign. So I kind of pictured and saw that one coming. Last story that I have, and I'm kind of cutting brief because I got neighbors who I guess want to share with the world that they're listening to music, which is always fun. But the let me get the last story. Sorry, y'all. I was ready. Y'all know I'm all usually ready. Our last story is related to our vice president, Mike Pence, who was at the Colts game last week. He thought it was in his best interest to walk out during the game because he was not satisfied with what he saw. So he had a bit of an attitude about that. And so he attended the game. Once he saw what he saw as far as players kneeling, not respecting the flag, then he decided to leave. So the cost for him attending the game was $250,000. If you look at Secret Service, if you look at flying him there, him buying the ticket, any other people that he had sitting with him, his location of his seating, all of these factors, amongst other things, played into him, the cost of him attending the game. And he attended after he saw that he was much displeased or dismayed, and he decided to walk out and leave the game. He posted a couple of tweets afterward in the midst of it all happening. And I just love these, so I'm going to read them all as they're written. I left today's Colts game because the President of the United States and I will not dignify any event that disrespects our soldiers, our flags, or our national anthem. At a time when so many Americans are inspiring our youth with their courage, resolve, and resilience, now more than ever, we should rally around our flag and everything that unites us. While everyone is entitled to their own opinions, I don't think it's too much to ask NFL players to respect the flag and our national anthem. Mike Pence, I'm not coming for you, but I'm going to say something. And I think you may want to look at this and understand, unless it's humanly possible, there are a lot of events and a lot of activities where the national anthem is presented. If you're expecting athletes to stand at events or whatever the case may be, and they forget or don't do so, I'm not going to say they don't forget, but if they choose not to, you're judging them based on a decision. You have probably been to events before and may not have stood during the national anthem or the Pledge of Allegiance. You may have grown up as a kid and not participated in the Pledge of Allegiance. We don't know. But you're sitting here like chastising them for making a choice. What I think still gets missed in this, it's lost in translation and still forgotten, is we really don't remember that time when athletes or when players were not out during the national anthem. I feel like we're so caught up in the current and the now of, well, they're not out for the national anthem and it's not right and they shouldn't disrespect the flag like that, when it's not really something that the NFL was doing before. So it's not as if they're breaking a rule or breaking the law. They're making a decision. They're doing something that they feel is their personal choice. And we are like giving them the third degree about it when it's like people already putting hundreds of thousands of dollars on betting on these athletes or betting on players. But then something as minuscule as if a player gets hurt, they ready to have a whole shut down the world. Like Odell Beckham got injured. I guarantee you a lot of people felt bad about him being injured, but even more people were probably upset because they had him on their fantasy team and it could have affected them winning some money or winning a pool or winning a prize or whatever the case may be. But they're not thinking, they're caught up in that, just like you have someone being trapped or viewing a person standing or not standing, choosing not to stand or not to participate during the national anthem. Going back to what I mentioned earlier in the podcast, easiest conflict resolution behind this is if it's really that big of a problem or that big of a deal, don't show it on TV. If you don't want it to be seen, don't show it. It's going to happen whether it's seen, not seen. I'm not going to say behind closed doors, but it's a choice. And also they're doing, they have that's their right if they choose to stand or if they choose to kneel. And also factoring in everything that has gone on, especially with police brutality, black men, black women being slain, being harmed for reasons that are out of their control. Those are all legit reasons as to why some folks have a right to choose not to stand during the national anthem. It's no different than, and I mean now it's gotten, what's made this story become such a wildfire in my opinion is now that since it's being balanced or looked at with not just athletes but not just professional athletes but kids who are choosing not to stand or whatever the case may be, they're getting a lot of them are getting a lot of scrutiny for doing so because they're taking a stand by taking a knee, and no one wants that. If that's what they choose to do, it especially, and I think what's even more because I do remember a friend of mine she posted a picture of her daughter who's part of a band, and she chose to take a knee. I have no problem with that. I think it's people don't like what's being done because it's drawing more attention than they expected. I think what people expect, and this is just my personal opinion, I could be 100% wrong. I truly feel that what's expected is that folks are just supposed to sit there, watch the game, do nothing, and go home. They're not supposed to have an opinion. You're not supposed to agree or disagree with what you are or aren't seeing on TV. You're supposed to literally do whatever we tell you to do. And if you do anything outside of those terms or outside of those confines, then that's a problem. I can guarantee you right now, and I'm saying this with a transparent and a bold presentation. I'm going to go back to something with Jerry Jones in a moment too. If Tom Brady was doing this, there would be no problem. If Brett Favre was doing this, there would be no problem. If you had any of your major icons doing this, I can guarantee you 9 times out of 10, it would be no problem. But because it's athletes who are in the league, who are black, or who are drawing more attention than they expect, it's a problem. Adding to the Jerry Jones, going back to the Jerry Jones portion, it was like Jerry Jones has amnesia. A couple weeks ago, you were sitting and you were taking a knee and everything was all right. Now all of a sudden, you don't want to take a knee because of this. And if any players on your team take a knee, then they should get fined or they should be unable to play football. Come on, y'all. Like you can't give somebody a hard time and then take away that hard time afterward. So that's what I'm gonna leave you all with today. I know this is a very strong topic. I know there were a lot of touching points that I addressed this week. But I just want people to understand, like, we can come together and do whatever we can, but we also have to know what our priorities and our main focus is at the end of the day. And that's truly what it's all about. So that's what I'm going to leave y'all with on this week's episode. Truly working hard on getting more content and getting more information as I'm seeing it, as it's made available to me. So I just want to make sure I leave that with you all today. So until next time, the past is signing out. If you are not following on social media, you're missing out. I definitely try to post as much information as I can through the past podcast page, through Twitter, Instagram, things of that sort. Maybe resurrecting in Snapchat, we'll see. But in the meantime, in between time, y'all take care. The past signing out. It's our. Did you make it to the end of the episode? If so, I do appreciate you listening and tuning in. These episodes get more and more valuable, and I do appreciate everyone taking time to sit down and listen to the episode. Whether you're actually listening to it once it's uploaded on Spreaker.com/Brate Podcast, or if you're downloading it and listening to it on your own convenience. If you want to check out any previous episodes, just check out that page. And if you'd like to inquire or provide any information or feedback or suggestions toward the podcast, please send those emails to pastpodcastbt@gmail.com. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Enjoy your day. Have a good week and be positive.